The void around Carnassus was cold, black, and empty. Even the faint glow of distant suns did little to pierce the eternal night. From orbit, the fortress monastery of the Stone Dogs, Galsay's Fury, hung like a dark jewel, a sentinel of grey iron and bronze. Bastions studded its flanks. Macro-cannon turrets lay dormant but watchful. Armor-plated docking spires jutted into the black, like spears cast against eternity. 6,000 years of isolation had not broken it. 6,000 years of neglect by distant high lords, of unanswered astropathic pleas, of forgotten tithe roots and lost allies, and still it endured. Within its command sanctum, Chapter Master Darius Blacklock stood alone before the great oculus. The stars beyond were scattered embers across a corpse-dark sky. Warp eddies shimmered faintly at the periphery of vision, like oil slicks on water. Furnace Point lay ahead, an invisible wound in the firmament, a region where real space thinned and the immaterium pressed hungrily close. His reflection stared back at him in the armored glass, a face carved by war, one eye replaced by a bionic lens that glowed faint amber, pale scars crossing a dark weathered brow. His sky-blue cloak stirred in the faint currents of recycled air. Behind him, the command deck thrummed with quiet activity. Servo skulls drifted between hololithic projectors. Data slates flickered. The auger arrays hummed as they passed the language of gravity and radiation. "Sir?" The voice was metallic, modulated through vox grills and layered with static. Margor's Explorator Virek 12 stood at the central cogitator nexus, mechadendrites coiled like iron serpents behind him. Red optics pulsed faintly beneath a hood of burnished brass. Sensors confirm an escalation of empiric turbulence within Furnace Point. Gravimetric readings are anomalous, quantum fluctuations consistent with phase translation signatures. Blacklock did not turn. "Gorgon," he said. "Yes, Chapter Master. KS3C exhibits sustained necrodermic energy output. Tomb complex activation levels rising exponentially. Probability of full dynastic awakening, 87.4%. On the central hololith, the Gorgon system rotated in cold silence. One world, dead, airless, long believed inert, now glowed with an unholy green corona. Lattices of energy crawled across its surface like veins igniting beneath pale skin. The sepulchral mind had awakened. Blacklock felt the old weight settle upon his shoulders. Not doubt, not fear, burden. "We have watched them for millennia," he said quietly. "Studied their patterns, traced their awakenings across the string. They rise in cycles, they consolidate, they harvest." His gauntlet tightened at his side. "They believe this region forgotten. They believe Carnassus beyond notice." Virek 12 inclined his head. The motion was precise, mechanical. Yet there was tension in it, microservos whining under strain. "Correction, Chapter Master. They do not believe. They calculate." A faint smile ghosted across Blacklock's scarred lips. "Then let them calculate this." He turned at last, the cloak flaring behind him. "Prepare the orbital batteries, muster the honor guard, activate Silentium protocols across 1st and 9th companies." The deck officers stiffened at that. Silentium, the word carried weight within the Stone Dogs. Ancient armor inlays, forged from a metal older than the chapter itself, hard enough to resist Goss flensing, resilient against the disintegration fields of Necron weaponry. Relics of a war none living remembered, but whose scars were etched into the chapter's gene memory. We march at dawn. Below the orbiting fortress, Carnassus burned. The monastic city sprawled across basalt plains veined with magma light. Foundries roared day and night, their chimneys vomiting ash into a bruised sky. Cathedral spires of iron and stone pierced the clouds, each etched with litanies of endurance and wrath. Within the arming halls of the First Company, Terminators advanced in measured strides. Each step shook the ferrocrete floor. Servo arms lowered slab-thick pauldrons into place. Tech Marines intoned Binharic hymns as they sealed power couplings and sanctified storm bolters. Veterans knelt in long ranks, while armor serfs polished the dull grey of their ceramite. Silentium inlays gleamed like veins of dark copper along their pauldrons and breastplates. Each plate bore centuries of kill marks, Xenos glyphs carved and then scored through, as if the metal itself despised their memory. Brother Captain Jorun stood at their head. His helm was cradled beneath one arm, revealing a face hard as cut granite. His gaze moved along the assembled warriors, not with doubt, but with expectation. "We were forged in isolation," he said, voice carrying easily through the vaulted chamber. "We were tempered without reinforcement. No crusade fleets came to our aid. No Primarch returned to guide us." He raised his helm, red eye lenses flaring to life. "We endure because we choose to endure. We advance because retreat is death, and when the foe stands before us..." A low murmur began among the ranks, swelling into a thunderous reply. "We break them." Elsewhere, the newly arrived 9th Primaris Company disembarked from dropships still glowing from atmospheric friction. Their armor bore fewer scars. Their movements were sharper, less burdened by centuries of attrition. Yet even they felt it, the tension in the air, the weight of something vast awakening beyond the system's edge. Sergeant Malrek of the 9th paused at the threshold of the outer battlements. Furnace Point shimmered faintly in the heavens, like a bruise spreading across reality. He had fought Tyranids on Aeaxus, orcs in the Varn expanse. He had seen entire hive spires fall in hours. But this felt older, colder. The first fleet contact came without warning. A shrill tone split the command deck aboard Galsai's Fury. Hololithic projections flickered violently as new signals flooded the auger arrays. "Phase translation signatures detected," cried one of the deck officers. "Multiple contacts emerging from non-linear vectors." Space above Gorgon tore like rotting silk. Sleek crescent vessels shimmered into being, impossible angles and smooth alien geometry. Their hulls drank in starlight. Emerald energy pulsed along their spines. 1 became 3, 3 became 12, then dozens. "Necron warships confirmed," Virek 12 rasped. "Composition suggests a full dynastic reclamation force." On the hololith, thin green beams lanced outward, knitting into a lattice that spread between ships like a skeletal web, a command network, a harvesting grid. Blacklock stepped forward. "They are anchoring real space," he said, "preparing for mass translation." As if in answer, a column of viridian light erupted from Gorgon's surface, punching upward into orbit. The beam fractured into branching lines, each one stabbing toward the outer planets of the Coralie string. Planets Blacklock had sworn to defend. "Sound general quarters," he ordered. "All ships to combat disposition." Klaxons howled through the fortress monastery and the fleet beyond. Strike cruisers powered their engines to full burn. Escorts shifted formation, macro cannon turrets rotating with ponderous menace. Above Carnassus, Furnace Point flared. The warp storm did not explode outward. It spiraled, slowly, deliberately. Time seemed to thicken. The stars distorted. bending like reflections in disturbed water. Vox traffic crackled with half-heard whispers. Several servitors collapsed outright, their organic components unable to withstand the empiric surge. Virek 12's mechadendrites twitched erratically. Empiric resonance increasing. Causality strain detected. Chronometric deviation at 0.3% and rising. Blacklock felt it too. A pressure behind the eyes, a memory of something that had not yet happened. The Necron fleet shifted formation, adjusting to the warp turbulence with eerie precision. "They have calculated the storm," he murmured. A new contact flared into existence at the edge of the system, not phasing in, burning in. A Stone Dog strike cruiser, translated from the warp in a flare of blue-white lightning. Hull scarred but intact. Then another. And another. Soresta's reinforcements had arrived. For a heartbeat, hope flared. Then the first Gorse barrage struck. A line of emerald fire speared across the void, striking the lead escort frigate Hound's vigil. Its void shields shimmered, then collapsed in a cascade of light. The beam sliced through adamantium like parchment. The vessel came apart soundlessly, its halves drifting apart as crew and debris vented into space. Silence gripped the command deck. Then, "Return fire!" Blacklock roared. Macro cannon batteries erupted. Nova shells streaked across the void. Lance beams carved incandescent scars across Necron hulls. One crescent vessel fractured under the barrage, its structure unraveling into a storm of metallic fragments. Yet even as it died, its fragments began to phase. Reforming. "Self-repair protocols active," Virek 12 intoned. "Their necrodermis adapts." Blacklock watched the void burn. 6,000 years of endurance had led to this moment. Isolation had forged them. Now the galaxy would test them. He keyed the fleet-wide Vox. "All Stone Dog's vessels," he said, voice carrying with iron clarity. "This is Chapter Master Blacklock. The enemy seeks to reclaim what they believe abandoned. They mistake endurance for weakness." Outside the viewport, Furnace Point writhed. The Necron lattice expanded. More ships emerged from green-lit apertures in reality. "We have survived neglect. We have survived betrayal. We have survived the long dark between crusades." A Necron capital ship loomed into view, vast, angular, its core blazing like a baleful star. "We will survive this." His voice hardened. "Engage, close distance, board where possible, break their command nodes." He paused, and in that pause every warrior of the Stone Dogs felt the weight of his will. "Endure," he said. The fleet surged forward into the storm. "Advance." Macro shells detonated against emerald shields. Strike cruisers burned hard toward the Necron line. "Break the foe." And in the darkness of the Corrales sector, the furnace burned. The void became a slaughterhouse. Macro shells the size of hab blocks tore incandescent paths through the darkness. Lance strikes carved spears of white fire across emerald shields. Explosions blossomed soundlessly, mute flowers of annihilation. And still the Necron line held. The Crescent warships adjusted formation with impossible precision, their movements devoid of hesitation or fear. Green lightning leapt between hulls, reinforcing their lattice. Where Imperial fire struck, necrodermis rippled and reknit, wounds sealing with cold, mechanical indifference. Range closing to optimal Lance convergence, reported Fleet Captain Hestevar from the bridge of the strike cruiser Iron Oath. Enemy capital ship, altering vector. Intercept course with Galsai's Fury. On the command deck of the fortress monastery, Blacklock watched the immense Necron vessel advance. It was vast, a barbed obelisk of black metal and green fire, its central core pulsing like a malignant heart. Smaller crescent escorts spiraled around it in synchronous arcs, forming a rotating shield of living warships. They seek decapitation, Virek 12 rasped. Logical, eliminate command nexus, disrupt human morale. Blacklock's bionic eye flared brighter as tactical runes scrolled across his vision. Then we will oblige them, he said. He activated the fortress-wide Vox. All batteries, concentrate fire on the primary obelisk-class target. Overcharge reactors to threshold Epsilon. I want that thing bleeding light. A tremor rolled through Galzai's fury as its macro cannon decks fired in unified salvo. The recoil alone shuddered through kilometers of armored bulkheads. Shells streaked outward in burning arcs, followed by converging lance beams that struck the Necron capital ship's rotating shield. The first impact shattered one of the escort crescents. The second punched through its hull. The third tore it apart entirely. Fragments spiraled away, glowing briefly, then phasing out of existence. Damage negligible to primary, Virek 12 intoned. The Necron obelisk answered. A beam of concentrated Goss energy lanced across the void, striking the port bastion of Galzai's fury. Void shields flared violently, collapsing in cascading sheets of light. The beam bored into the fortress's outer armor, atomizing layers of adamantium and ceramite in a widening cone. Decks 18 through 23 ceased to exist. Atmosphere vented in a frozen plume. Thousands of serfs died in silence. Blacklock did not look away. Report! Port macro battery cluster destroyed, replied a bridge officer, blood trickling from his nose as feedback from a ruptured console sparked nearby. Internal fires contained. Casualties severe. Blacklock's jaw tightened. Reroute power from auxiliary manufacturing grids. Seal affected sectors. We endure. Another Gauss beam struck, this one clipping the edge of the fortress dorsal spire. A cathedral tower the size of a city block sheared off, tumbling into the void in slow rotation. Yet still the guns fired. Chapter Master, came a new voice across the Vox, calm, steady, edged with anticipation. Brother Captain Jorun. Teleportarium arrays are primed. We have a lock on the enemy capital vessel's outer hull. Blacklock's gaze flicked to the tactical projection. Through the interference of warp turbulence and Necron phase fields, faint green outlines marked potential breach points. You will not have long, Blacklock said. Their shields are fluctuating but adapting. We will not require long. Blacklock allowed himself the faintest nod. Then go. Across Galzai's fury, teleport chambers blazed with white light. Terminators of the First Company stood encased in tactical dreadnought armor, silentium inlays glowing faintly like veins beneath storm-dark ceramite. Thunder hammers crackled with captive lightning. Storm shields locked into place. Jorun lowered his helm into position. For Carnassus, he said. For the stone dogs, came the reply. The light swallowed them. They materialized into hell. The interior of the Necron vessel was a cathedral of cold geometry. Impossibly tall vaults of black metal, etched with shifting glyphs. Gravity fluctuated erratically. Green light pulsed along walls like the slow heartbeat of something ancient and cruel. Necron warriors turned in perfect unison as the Terminators appeared. Gauss fire erupted instantly. Green beams flayed across the chamber. One struck Brother Halvek full in the chest. his armor blackened and peeled away under the disintegration field, but the silentium inlay held, diffusing the worst of the effect. Halvek roared and returned fire, his storm bolter shredding 2 Necron warriors into sparking ruin. "Form line!" Jorun bellowed. Thunder hammers fell, each impact detonated with concussive fury, pulverizing living metal into molten fragments. Storm shields absorbed the worst of the Gauss barrage, though several flickered and failed under sustained fire. Necron Lich Guard advanced from the far archway, taller, more ornate, their war scythes humming with lethal energy. Jorun met the first head-on. The war scythe carved a glowing arc toward his helm. He raised his shield, the blade bit deep, slicing through outer layers before grinding to a halt against silentium reinforcement. Jorun drove forward. His thunder hammer came down with the weight of centuries. The Lich Guard exploded in a storm of shattered necrodermis. "Advance!" he roared. They pushed deeper into the vessel. Back in the void, the battle reached its crescendo. The warp storm intensified. Furnace Point spiraled faster, its empiric currents dragging at ships like invisible claws. One escort frigate misjudged its vector and drifted too close to the maelstrom's edge. Reality peeled away from its hull. The vessel twisted, elongated, and was gone. Not destroyed, unmade. Chronometric instability rising, Virek 12 warned. Causality fractures expanding. We must conclude engagement rapidly. Blacklock watched the Necron obelisk. It had slowed. Its green lattice flickered erratically. "Jorun," he voxed. "Status." Static crackled. Then, "We have reached a central nexus," came Jorun's strained reply. The background was thunder and Gauss discharge. A command node, vast. We are engaging a construct, larger than the rest. The hololith flared as internal scans briefly penetrated the Necron vessel. At its core stood a towering figure of burnished living metal, crowned in barbed spines, eyes blazing like twin stars. A lord of the dynasty, the sepulchral mind made manifest. "We will sever it," Jorun growled. On the exterior, the Necron capital ship began to pulse violently. Its weapons faltered. Several crescent escorts drifted out of formation. Blacklock felt it. The moment. "All ships," he commanded, voice iron hard. "Full barrage. Target the primary. Now." Every gun aboard Galsai's Fury and the remaining Stone Dog's fleet fired as one. Macro shells struck in converging arcs. Lance beams bored into weakened shields. The obelisk's hull ruptured under the sustained assault. Inside, Jorun met the Necron Lord in single combat. The construct moved with inhuman speed, war scythe sweeping in blinding arcs. It severed Brother Halvek at the waist. It pierced another Terminator clean through the chest. Jorun absorbed a blow that would have claved a tank in two. His shield shattered. He stepped into the next strike, locked the war scythe haft beneath his arm, and drove his thunder hammer into the Necron Lord's chest. Once, twice, 3 times. On the final impact, the construct's core cracked. Green light burst outward in a blinding sphere. "Teleport lock failing," someone shouted over the vox. Jorunan's last sight was the Lord disintegrating into cascading shards of light. Then the world became white. The Necron capital ship detonated. Not in flame, but in implosion. Its hull folded inward, collapsing into a sphere of concentrated green brilliance before vanishing entirely. The shockwave rippled outward, disrupting the lattice network. Crescent escorts flickered and phased erratically, several tearing themselves apart in unstable translation. The remaining Necron vessels began to withdraw, phasing out in streaks of emerald light. The void fell silent. Furnace Point continued its slow spiral. But the Necron fleet was gone. On the command deck, Blacklock stood unmoving. "Boarding signatures?" he asked. "Teleport retrieval incomplete," Virek 12 replied. "Of first company, 8 life signs confirmed, 12 unaccounted for." Blacklock closed his eyes briefly. A price, always a price. "Signal all vessels," he said at last. "Maintain combat readiness. This was a probe, not a conquest." Beyond the viewport, debris drifted in the cold dark. Fragments of ships, shards of necrodermis, frozen bodies turning slowly in eternal orbit. Carnassus still burned below. The furnace still turned. And somewhere in the depths of Gorgon, beneath dead stone and ancient metal, other tombs stirred. Blacklock's bionic eye glowed brighter as he stared into the darkness. "They will return," he said quietly. Behind him, the surviving officers of the Stone Dogs straightened. "And when they do," he finished, voice low and unyielding, "we will be waiting."